Hey, what's up, man?
Uh, Me?
Yeah, I hope so.
It is Los Angeles, so
You never know, right?
yeah.
Nice to meet you, man.
You too. Is this a good volume for you?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. It sounds great.
Good. I can be louder, I can be quieter,
There's so many things that are possible.
I can use my intimate voice.
There you go. We could have an acting lesson for sure. Yeah, no, it's
Yeah,
good. I like it.
good.
Yeah,
Great.
everything's set. How's LA today?
It's shaping up to be beautiful.
Yeah.
We're getting our LA back. Uh, it has not been anything like what we all know LA to be like lately
Okay.
because of all the rains and the cold weather. It's
Yeah.
the strangest winter I can remember. I've lived here for 40 plus years.
Wow.
And yeah, it's been strange. But what's nice is the garden is just gorgeous. The
Yeah.
trees are going crazy. And of course, so is the pollen.
Right. Yeah. 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 Sounds like you got Kansas City weather. I mean, that's what we do here. We got all this strange stuff going on. We got pollen, we got humidity and all of that. So that's wild.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in New York.
Okay.
So I am used to what Easterners call weather.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
but Los Angeles has weather too.
Yeah. Just
It's
different
really
weather.
funny. Yeah, I was thinking the other day about Larry Hart's lyric from "Lady Is a Tramp."
Yeah.
Hates California. It's cold and it's damp. And I was thinking, Larry Hart spent what, maybe a couple of seasons out here writing. It's like, what does he know about cold and damp Los
Ex-
Angeles?
exactly. Exactly. There's something
It's
going
like,
on.
I mean, he's from Broadway in Harlem. What the hell is he talking about?
Could have been a
But
fever
now
dream.
this year, he's absolutely spot on.
Maybe he just saw the future and was trying to
Yeah, he's
pontificate.
like, right. He's like the Nostradamus of musical theater
That's what
lyricists.
I'm saying. And we all don't know it. And now
Yeah.
we do. We got it figured
Yeah.
out. So, but man, it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out. And I think along with the weird weather in LA, the last 3 years living through COVID's been quite a thing. And I'm curious how you survived that time period as an artist and how it's changed the way that you live your life and do things now.
Well, I spent COVID producing and writing, which is, I think some people did baked sourdough bread and perfected things like that. I ended up just hunkering down. I'm blessed in that. In addition to being an actor, I'm also a musician. That's why I'm on your show,
Yeah.
and so I can go back and forth. And of course, all the acting depends on audiences, and COVID screwed that up for everybody and musicians too. But at least with the music, I could do it at home by myself on my own, and it's how I got through it. A couple months into the pandemic, I realized I needed to share my music. And I realized that people are doing this on Facebook, and I'm not a technophobe at all, but it's not something I had been doing. And so I decided to do a couple of Facebook Live concerts, what I call quarantini concerts. And I called the first one Songs from the Bench. They were, from the proverbial piano bench, like trunk songs, if you will.
Sure.
Also because I was sitting on a bench playing the piano, and because we had all been benched,
Yeah.
uh, you know, in the pandemic. And I really enjoyed doing that. So I did another one. I called it, Songs from the Bench, 2 more songs from the bench,
Yeah.
could go on and on, right?
Oh, yeah.
Beyond the valley of songs from the bench, and
Yes, exactly.
songs from the bench rides again. Uh,
The
so
continuation.
I found this to be very satisfying, and I got nice feedback from my friends and family and fans. And what I had discovered in going through my catalog was I had a lot of songs that I had not recorded. This Past Imperfect is why I'm on this show, is my 4th studio album. And that's a lot of songs, but I still had songs in the bench that I had never touched or hadn't finished or realized we're not there yet.
Yeah.
And we're talking about 40 years going back. And so this gave me a really great drive to work on this stuff. Nothing else is going on.
Yeah.
No pressures,
Yep.
Nobody's ringing the doorbell. The
Yeah.
phone
Right.
sure ain't ringing. And so, and I was able to do that. And what was interesting is my wife is a yoga therapist and health educator. And of course, in that first month, nobody knew anything. All the work dried up for everybody. But blessedly, she started working again on Zoom. And so we had to rethink our lives. We live in a small house. We have a studio office in the back. We put her in the living room. And we turned it into her Zoom yoga studio, threw away the couch, literally put the couch on the street. And it just became hers. And so I was in the garage studio with my grand piano. It was my ultimate man cave, just doing my thing.
Yeah.
I got my little recording equipment out and just started plowing through these songs and started writing new ones. And eventually I had something like 20 songs. And I went, oh, wow, okay, I'm making an album. I'm making an album. So just over a year ago, I reached out to my old friend who's a drummer, John Harvey, who's my drummer on Past Imperfect. And I said, listen, I have these songs. Can you just come over and let's just play? And I didn't tell him that I was, had an inkling that it might turn into an album because that was too scary to think about.
Yeah.
So he came over and played and we were having a great time and these are great. So he recommended Mike Schneblin, who's my bass player on Past Imperfect. And he came in and we started rehearsing and it was just a great vibe. And we were still cautious about COVID, wearing masks and doing what we could, being outdoors a lot. But we were all vaccinated and felt pretty good about it. And thankfully, we were able to start getting into the studios and we had to, adhere to some protocols and whatnot. But that's how it all came to be. And that's how I got through COVID.
Yeah.
And it was a blessing, a real
Yeah,
blessing.
for sure. So I'm curious, as a creative person, you're an actor and you're a musician. How did the zygote split? How did it fuse together? How did this world of jazz and being an actor, how does it work for you?
Well, we got to go all the way back to the Civil War, as Tom Waits once said. I mean, I started singing in church when I was in third grade. And I also started going to Broadway musicals when I was in third grade. And it all kind of fused together at a very early age.
Yeah.
And I think what really attracted me to musical theater was kind of the jazzier stuff and the R&B and soul stuff. One of my very first musicals was The Wiz.
Yeah.
And when I was just maybe 14, Ain't Misbehavin' came out on Broadway, and of course I fell in love with Fats Waller. But even before that, I was listening to George Benson. He was a huge hero of mine when I was 13, 14 years old. He did a record called Weekend in LA, and the hit song from that was on Broadway. And then he did a short stint on Broadway to promote the album. I don't know, he did a week at the Belasco. I went there with my buddy because I grew up in the suburbs. We took the train in on our own at 13, went to see George Benson. And I was just, over the moon about it. I'd been hearing him on the radio. It was around the time when he was doing This Masquerade. My very first jazz album was actually a George Benson album called Cookbook.
Wow. Yeah.
And he sings one tune on that album called he did All of Me. And I just thought, wow, I want to sound like that guy. And I was 12 years old. And then he came out with all the popular stuff. So we actually, because I was such a geek at that age, I knew all the sidemen too. And after the concert, I saw his piano player come out of the stage door. Jorge D'Alto. And I went right up to him. I said, "Oh man, you're Jorge D'Alto." You know, I play the piano and blah, blah, blah. And he said, "You guys are so cool. You want to meet George?" And I was like, yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's actually the perfect melding of, the Broadway meets the jazz, because there he is, George Benson on Broadway. And he took us backstage. We got to meet George. He was super cool. He had all his great guitars on the floor around him and beautiful women in the dressing room. And he signed our programs and he said, "You guys, you are the inspiration for my next show." And I walked out of there on a cloud,
Yeah.
But for me, being a singer and being interested in the theater, I started performing musicals in 8th grade. And I think that's how it all kind of came to be, because there was this tension or symbiosis maybe between the theater and the music. But my love was always jazz. That was the music I was into. My friends were into Led Zeppelin and Elton John. I was into jazz. I was like, yeah, but what about George Benson? And what about Grover Washington Jr. and Weather Report? And
Yeah.
they just thought I was from planet Mars.
But it's interesting when I think about what you have to do as an actor and then what jazz musicians have to do. There's a level of mastering improv. Do those lines kind of come together and feed off of each other for you?
Well, I suppose they do. Yes. I mean, you call it improv. I might call it imagination, because you just have to bring it to the work as an actor and as a jazz musician or as a singer, as a songwriter. You just have to keep leaning on your imagination and don't hold back. So in a sense, that is improvising. But I think the way I feel about it, it's more about letting that flow constantly happen, not trying to block the imagination, and always asking questions, always trying to figure out how to make it better and how to make it sing, if you will, and make it interesting to yourself. I mean, I am my first audience, and I am admittedly hard to please. So, but on the other side of it is, if something tickles me, if I write a lyric and I'm just immediately tickled by it, I think, okay, great.
Yeah.
This audience says great, so I'm gonna just go with that and make it work.
Yeah. It's interesting. I love that answer because it really is about the imagination. And I was just referencing this today earlier on in an interview because of LA. Charles Bukowski once said, "We're born geniuses and buried idiots." And I think about how the imagination is a part of that process. And as we get older and build all these fences around our brains because of what we've experienced, we squeeze that out and we don't have that as much for some people. Not for everybody, but
I think Bukowski was riffing on Picasso, who said every child is an artist, and the trick is how to stay an artist, right?
That's it. That's it.
I'm paraphrasing, but I think Picasso was getting at that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're all standing on each other's shoulders, so that makes total sense.
Yeah,
that
I'm certainly doing that. All the songs on Past Imperfect are informed by all the songwriters that I've loved my whole life.
Yeah.
Joni Mitchell and Paul Simon and Tom Waits and even Thelonious Monk and Miles Davis and Steely Dan. They're all in there.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot. There's a handful of musicians that I still talk to that go out on tour with Steely Dan. And what a powerhouse sound that is. Like to this day, it's almost like a spaceship just landed or came above and just threw the tape out. It's just something you just don't hear. And those cats are really into the jazz vibe. They have this great kind of melting pot of sounds that go into what they do.
Yeah. Have you ever interviewed or are you familiar with Warren Bernhardt?
I know the name.
Yeah, he's a piano player.
Yeah.
But I saw him play piano for Steely Dan on tour at the Hollywood Bowl. It must have been quite a few years ago now, when Becker was still alive.
Yeah.
But he's just one of my piano heroes. I've
Yeah.
always been into piano players. They're my favorite. I am a piano player. I play on Past Imperfect. I play 10 of the 17 songs, and Adam Bravo plays the other 7. And I brought him on the album because I could hear things that needed to have those jazz chops that I don't have in the fingers. I don't have that kind of solo technique.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm always in awe of jazz piano players. They are my ultimate heroes.
Absolutely. Let me
So,
ask.
like I said about Jorge Dalto and
Sure.
Warren
Right.
Bernhardt, like, how do you know all these sidemen? But
Well,
Warren had a great career as a solo recording artist and a trio recording artist, and he actually had a big fan in Bill Evans.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Max Hamer, I believe, is the pianist for Arturo Sandoval. And to this day, Arturo put on the best live jazz show I've ever seen in my life. He had this entertainment bone, this charisma, this way of like, he was almost like a comedian. He was like talking to the audience, pulling them in, and just it was magnetic. And I remember talking to him about it and how he kind of layered in his take on things. And it's just fascinating because when you think about the piano and certain instruments, they really are the backbone of what you're listening to. They really provide the structure, the bones of what you're getting into.
Yeah. Interesting you brought up Arturo, because my last album, which is called Bard Fly, which is a fusion of theater and music and jazz music. It's my jazz interpretations of songs from Shakespeare's plays.
Yeah.
And my piano player on that album is Mahesh Balasuria, who played with Arturo.
Wow. It's funny. It's 6 degrees. It's always out there. What are you ultimately hoping? I know this isn't something that's in the artist's mind, but I'm curious, what are you hoping the listener gets from this album?
That's a very good question. The time for deep listening. I think it's whether I did it intentionally. When I put out an album of 17 tracks, I think I'm telling people, sit down and listen.
Yeah.
Take the time. When was the last time you sat down and listened to an entire album?
I yesterday listened to Cecilia Smith. She's a vibes player. She just did a retrospective on Mary Lou Williams, and I had it in the car, and I drove my son to work quite a ways away, about 45 minutes away, and I listened to that thing on repeat, and I was fascinated by it. But I was thinking the same thing. I was like, how many people out there in this cherry picking world of finding an iTunes song and constructing your own playlist? How many times do we do that? And we are revisiting vinyl, and it is that storybook. It's the ultimate warm sound that goes from start to finish. But you're right. I mean, how many people do that anymore?
And I think as you get older, it's harder to find the time to do that. But I mean, I have beautiful memories of sitting on the floor in my sister's bedroom with her old receiver, that beautiful green light, and it would be dark, and it would be reflecting on my face, and I'd be listening to Miles Davis' Kind of Blue all the way through, hating to get up and turn the record over because you just wanted to go and go.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting with an old one of those close and play kind of record players and listening for the first time to Joni Mitchell's Court and Spark, or hearing Bette Midler do the Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy, or both Joni and Bette at the same time recording Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross Twisted, and thinking what a great experience that was, to be immersed in that way. I try to do it often. Of course, in LA, we have to drive a lot.
Yeah.
And I live in a place called Woodland Hills, which is West Valley. It's it's on the outskirts of where you can be in Los Angeles and still be technically in the city of Los Angeles. So it takes me a while to get places. And I love taking that time to listen to music. And if I can get a whole album in, it's a great experience. I still pop CDs into my car, and actually, Past Imperfect, I put out CDs. I realize that not a lot of people are interested in CDs anymore, but one, it's nice for PR, but it's nice to actually have this physical thing that you can pop in and just kind of say, this is the whole experience in one. Let's go.
Absolutely.
So that's what I do hope. And I hope that I can give people a deep listening experience. And I put a lot of attention into the lyrics, attention and intention. I mean, I consider myself to be maybe first and foremost a lyricist. So that's an important experience that I want to convey for people, to listen to the words and put yourself in these stories.
Yeah. So you've thrown out some really big names, Hollywood Bowl, Monk. There's been a lot of things that we've talked about. Let's say we get off the phone, the Jazz DeLorean pulls up in front of your house, you punch in the digits. Where are you going? Who are you going to see live?
I missed a little bit of it because you broke up, but
sorry. If you could get into a Jazz DeLorean and go back in time and see any musician at any place, where are you going? Who are you going to go see?
oh wow. Well, it's got to be Bill Evans.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And maybe, maybe we're in Manhattan and we can luck into a couple of folks in the same night.
Yeah. We could throw more in there. It's fine. It's a fictional question, so it's fine.
Right. I mean, so yeah, let's see if we can cover Bill Evans, and let's see if we can cover Coltrane and Monk. I think that would be a fantastic evening.
I'm going to join you. I'll just jump in the back. We'll go. We're in. Yeah. When I leave the house, I have 4 dogs. That's my go-to. I always tell the Google Home, put Bill Evans on, and it always just makes them feel good. They like Bill Evans. So, let me ask you this: as an artist, as a performer, and this could be either an acting or it can be as a musician. What was the stage that you got on where you're like, I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe this is happening.
Oh, it happened quite young. When I was 19 years old, I was cast in a musical written by and starring Anthony Newley called Chaplin. There was another Chaplin that hit Broadway sometime, I don't know, 10 or some years ago, totally different. And I was cast as teenage Chaplin. So Newley was playing Chaplin, and I was cast as his younger self. It was a pre-Broadway engagement at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, which is where, of course, the Academy Awards used to broadcast from. It's just, 2,000 seats, and it's this huge place that's kind of fantastic. So yes, singing and dancing and acting, being Charlie Chaplin on that stage with Anthony Newley was a remarkable experience.
Yeah.
And couldn't believe I was there.
So let me ask you this: are you playing live now? Are you doing live jazz shows?
I don't play out a lot. I just did a solo appearance a couple of weeks ago, and featured some of the songs from Past Imperfect. I hope to do a concert in August, but I have other projects as well. I'm about to go into a production of Shakespeare's The Tempest, and I will be playing the piano as well. And the score is going to have sort of a 1940s swing element to it.
Yeah.
I haven't started rehearsals yet, so I can't tell you too many details about the concept, but it's going to be not your grandfather's Tempest. So that's kind of been my whole life, really, is music and theater, and often together. And often the roles I've been cast in as an actor involve music in some way, either singing or playing the piano or etc.
Yeah. So I guess I was just curious because I know that crowds are a little bit different now with the absence of live shows. I was just curious if you had been out there and how it felt.
Well, I can tell you the first time I performed in front of an audience in public, just a couple of weeks ago with my songs, it was a pretty great feeling. It was better than sex. I mean, it was good, right? Yeah. It was just to feel that warmth and of actual people in the room with you. It can't be beat.
Yeah. I think that's what we that's what we learned during this time. As much as we're connected with Zoom, there was nothing like community and knowing that we had people that we could share this with, especially with jazz, and acting. It's a people kind of a thing.
Very much so, yeah.
So,
We'll see what happens with the Tempest, and we're going to be running for 5 weeks, something like that.
okay.
And I'm hoping that we'll get audiences.
Yeah. Oh,
I mean, people are coming back. I go to the theater, I go to concerts. We have a wonderful performing arts center here at Cal State Northridge called the Soraya,
yeah.
with great jazz programming. And the very first concert my wife and I went to, once things started to open up a little bit, was at the Soraya. We heard Arturo O'Farrell, and
Yeah.
then we also got to hear Branford Marsalis and the Count Basie Orchestra, and things started
Wow.
to come back, and it was pretty exciting. And
That's cool.
just recently, a couple months ago, we heard a reunion concert with Joshua Redman, Brad Meldau, Brian Blade,
Wow.
and Christian McBride. And it just felt like, wow, okay, we can do this again. We're back,
Uh-huh.
you know.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of it from my end. I'm seeing all these albums and musicians and things are waking up, because for so long it was like no one knew what was going on. No one knew if, like you just said, very simply put, was this going to come back? And the answer is yes, it has.
Yeah, and I think some of these big names are stepping up. Like, let's make this happen. In
Yeah.
the rock world too, you can see that they started going out. Van Morrison did a concert at the Hollywood Bowl.
Yeah.
Last summer, in the middle of, after vaccinations, but still in the middle of the pandemic. And big people are coming out and saying, we got to get people back. Happened on Broadway too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, John, if anyone wants, where's the proper place to go pick up the new album, learn anything about what's going on in your world? Where can they go?
Start with my website, johnallee.com, JohnAllee.com. Then you can, it's streaming in all the places, Apple and Spotify and Amazon Music, and you can buy actual physical CDs on my Bandcamp page, but all of that can be accessed through my website. I hope people do listen, for sure.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot in there, and it's a lot of styles: jazz, blues, folky pop, jazz pop, and I think there's something in there for everyone.
Absolutely, I agree. Hey, John, thank you for taking some time out today to talk about the album and your career. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it too. It's very nice to talk to you and to be
Absolutely.
invited.